The first thing I remember is the sound. Not the impact. Not the screaming tires. Not even the shatter of glass. Just the sound that came after, all the sound falling away at once. A silence so sudden it felt like a vacuum in my chest. I woke in the hospital. White walls. Soft beeping. That chemical scent that clings to your skin. My body ached like it had been folded and refolded by something cruel. There were voices. Nurses. A detective. My sister. Everyone said the same thing. You're lucky to be alive. But it didn't feel like luck. They told me I'd been found in the ditch off Highway 47. My car a twisted cage of steel and fire. They didn't know how I'd made it out. But someone had pulled me free. Some man. A witness said he was tall, wearing a coat, his face in shadow. He didn't wait for thanks. He didn't stick around. He just saved me. And vanished. Probably a trucker, someone said. Or a good Samaritan. But I didn't believe that. There was something else. Something familiar in the silence before I blacked out. A breath. A word I didn't understand. The way you know a face in a dream but can't name it when you wake. 3 days after I was discharged, the hospital mailed me my personal effects. Wallet. Phone. And something else. Something that hadn't been mine. A pocket knife. Old. Worn smooth. Initials carved into the handle, DJS. I stared at it for hours. It didn't make sense. Until it did. When I was 12, I asked my mother what my father's name was. The real one. The one who left before I could walk. She said she didn't know? Said he didn't matter? But I'd found his name once. On a court document buried in a box in the garage. Daniel James Stratton. DJS. The initials burned into the knife. I tried to shake it. Coincidence. A mix-up. A dead man's relic passed through the system. But I couldn't. I couldn't shake the way I felt when I held it. Like my fingers already knew the shape. The next day, I drove back to the crash site. I parked along the shoulder and walked into the woods. The trees were tall here. Quiet. The ditch was deeper than I expected. I stood at the edge and tried to see it again. My car crumpled, smoke in the air, blood in my mouth. I imagined the stranger. Hands wrapped under my arms. Pulling me free. Carrying me like I weighed nothing. Saying something in my ear I couldn't remember. I crouched down and pressed my hand to the ground. It was cold. Then I found the boot print. Just one. Half sunken. Facing away from the road. The rest had been washed away by rain. But this one remained. Like a signature. I sat there for what felt like hours. Because whoever he was, he'd left something behind. And not just the knife. A feeling. Like I'd been seen. Like I'd been known. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept hearing the breath in my memory, the one just before the crash. Not a gasp. Not a scream. A whisper. My name. And it wasn't my voice saying it. The next morning, I called the DMV. Asked for a list of known registered drivers named Daniel Stratton in the state. There were 2. One dead. One in a nursing home upstate. Neither one was mine. I almost gave up. Until I looked closer at the envelope the knife came in. The return address was smudged. But there was a name. R. Stratton. And a town I hadn't heard in years. Echo Springs. I packed a bag. Got in my car. And drove. Not because I knew what I was looking for. But because some part of me already knew I'd been found. I just needed to understand why. Echo Springs wasn't a town. It was a whisper pretending to be one. The road narrowed as I drove in, 2 faded lanes winding through hills and long stretches of pine. A general store, a gas station, a diner with a rusted sign that just read, EATS. That was it. The kind of place where strangers weren't invisible, they were impossible. I pulled into the motel on the edge of town. A single strip of rooms, all painted the same chipping yellow. The woman at the desk asked for my name, but not why I was here. She didn't need to. Everyone in Echo Springs already knew when someone didn't belong. The room smelled like mildew and pine-scented cleaner. I dropped my bag and laid the knife on the nightstand. Stared at it. Still waiting for it to explain itself. Then I opened my laptop. Googled R. Stratton. Plus. Echo Springs. Nothing. Searched the local paper's archive. Limited. Spotty. But a name popped up in the classifieds from 6 years ago. Robert Stratton. Woodwork. Repairs. No job too small. I wrote the number down, even though it was disconnected. Then I did what I hadn't done in a long time. I went walking. I passed the diner. A mechanic's shop. An antique store that looked more like a mausoleum. And finally, a public library that looked abandoned, until I heard the bell jingle as I stepped inside. It smelled like paper and dust and quiet lives. The librarian looked up. Older. Thin. Hair pulled into a knot at the base of her neck. Looking for anything? She asked. I held up the name. Robert Stratton. She paused, squinted, then nodded slowly. Bob? Haven't seen him in a couple years. Lived on the North Ridge out by Calvert Road. Used to fix everything around here. Had hands like a sculptor. I asked if he had family. She hesitated. Not around here. But I think he had a son once. Long time ago. Left early. Didn't come back. I thanked her. Jotted down Calvert Road. Drove out there as the sun began to dip, casting orange through the pines like something holy. The house was small. Weathered wood, windows fogged with age. The porch sagged. But it stood like it was still waiting for someone to come home. I stepped up, knocked. Nothing. I turned the knob. Unlocked. Inside, silence. The kind you don't get in cities. The kind that listens. Dust floated through shafts of light. Tools lined the walls, planes, chisels, vices, all cared for like relics. On the workbench, a wooden figurine half-carved, a boy, arms outstretched, unfinished. In the back, a fireplace. Above it, a photograph. A man, mid-30s, smiling like he didn't do it often. Hair like mine. Eyes I'd seen in the mirror. Holding a child on his shoulders. Me. I sat down on the couch. The cushions barely gave, like they hadn't been touched in years. I didn't cry. I listened. To the wind in the trees. To the way the floor creaked like memory. To the question rising in my chest. What if he'd been watching all along? And if he had, why did he only come back to save me? I picked up the figurine. Ran my thumb along the unfinished edges. Then I saw the calendar on the wall. A red circle around a date. The day of the accident. Underneath it, in scratchy ink. Make it right. I didn't know what it meant. Not yet. But I was going to find out. I returned to the house the next morning, just after dawn. The air was sharp, wet with the kind of chill that seeps into your teeth. The fog hadn't lifted from the ridge. It made the house look like a memory, faded, half there. I brought coffee and an empty notebook. The door creaked the same way when I pushed it open. It felt less like trespassing now, more like permission had been quietly granted. I started in the back room. Closets. Cabinets. The drawers and the workbench. I wasn't looking for anything specific, just following the same instinct that had carried me here in the first place. I found them in a box under the bed. Letters. Dozens. Maybe more. Each one labeled in neat block handwriting. To my son. The earliest was dated the year I turned 6. The latest, the day before the accident. I sat on the floor, legs crossed, and began to read. The first one was clumsy. Like he didn't know how to write to a child who didn't know him. Like he was introducing himself to the idea of being a father. Asterisk. You don't know me. I don't expect you to. But I know you. I know you have a favorite dinosaur. I know you hate thunderstorms. I know you look just like me. I saw you once in the store. You were 6. You held your mother's hand like it was the only thing anchoring you to the planet. I wanted to say hi. I didn't. I'm sorry. I hope you're kind. I hope you grow up slower than I did. I hope you don't inherit the worst parts of me. Dad. The next one was a year later. Shorter. Asterisk. You turned 7 last week. I saw the balloons. Red and gold. You had a cape on. Superman. You tried to fly off the porch railing. Your mom caught you. I laughed until I cried. I'm still sorry. But I'm trying to be better. The letters went on like that. Snapshots of moments I'd lived but never noticed being watched. Things I didn't remember until I saw them through his eyes. The night I got stung by a wasp. The first time I lost a tooth. The way I used to line up my cereal boxes like soldiers. He remembered it all. And he wrote it down. To no one. To me. To himself. Then I reached the letter dated a week before the crash. It was different. The handwriting shakier. The tone sharper. Final. Asterisk. I heard about your new job. Congratulations. You did it without me. You've done everything without me. And yet, here I am, writing another letter you'll never see. I thought I'd stopped hoping. But I haven't. I carry you like a phantom limb. This week I'll drive past your work. Not to follow. Just to see. Just to know you're real. If something happened to you, I don't think I'd survive it. But if something did happen, I'd want to be there. I'd do anything to make it right. Even if it's the last thing I do. Dad. I set the letter down like it was fragile. Because it was. I was. I didn't know if he had planned to be there that night. Or if fate had pulled him in one final time. But I knew now, he hadn't saved me out of obligation. He'd saved me because he'd been saving me in small ways all my life. I just hadn't known it. Until now. The next morning, I opened the garage. The hinges screamed like they hadn't moved in years. Inside, the air was dry and stale, filled with the sharp, metallic scent of rust and old gasoline. Shafts of light filtered through slats in the wood, painting long, crooked bars across the concrete floor. It was a time capsule. Tools hung on nails, arranged with reverence. A workbench cluttered with screws, nails, bits of wood curled like shavings from a forgotten sculpture. And in the corner, covered by a canvas tarp, something large. I pulled the tarp back slowly. A motorcycle. Old. Classic. A Harley with flaking black paint and chrome dulled by dust. The kind of machine that made noise just by being remembered. There was a box strapped to the back, bolted to the frame. Inside were more letters. But not to me. These were addressed to no one. No greeting. No closing. Just entries. Thoughts. Dates. His handwriting sharper, faster. A boy should never have to feel forgotten. I saw him again today. Across the street. He looked tired. Older. Like he's carrying something he doesn't talk about. Maybe we have that in common. He works too much. I can tell. Always moving. Like if he stops, something will catch him. I know that rhythm. I used to dance to it. He almost smiled at a coworker. Almost. It cracked my chest open. Every entry was like watching myself through someone else's grief. Not stalking. Not obsession. Just mourning in real time. One line stood out, dated just 2 days before the crash. If I could trade places with him, I would. Without hesitation. And under that. Maybe I still can. I stared at the ink until it blurred. Because I realized something I hadn't let myself believe yet. He knew. Not just about me. He knew the crash was coming. Or maybe he feared it. Maybe he felt it in his bones. Some fathers sense storms in their knees. Maybe mine sensed tragedy in his blood. I opened the garage door wider. Let the light in. Because everything was shifting now. This wasn't a story about a man who showed up once to save me. It was about a man who never stopped trying to. Even when no one saw it. Even when I didn't want it. I rolled the bike into the open air. The tires were low. The engine coughed but held. I sat on it, felt the weight beneath me. It wasn't just a motorcycle. It was a promise. And I wasn't going to leave Echo Springs until I understood all of it. Every whisper. Every letter. Every mile he'd ridden in silence just to be near enough to catch me when I fell. The engine didn't sound like it had much left in it, but it started. I rode through the pine-shadowed roads of Echo Springs, gravel kicking up behind me like memory. Every turn felt like a question. Every stretch of road an echo. He rode these roads. He came here for reasons he never got to say. I didn't know what I was looking for, until I remembered the drawer. The one in the study I hadn't opened. Back at the house, I found it stuck. The wood swollen from age. I had to pry it with the knife he left behind. Inside was a map. Hand-drawn. Annotated. The kind people make when memory is too fragile to trust. Red X's scattered across the state. Diner napkins tucked in the folds with names. Cross streets. Notes. Saw him laugh here. Asked about the blue marble. Still keeps it. Lost tooth. Right incisor. He kept it under his pillow. Each entry was a moment. A visit. He hadn't just watched. He'd been near me. For decades. One note was circled 3 times. April 17th, he looked right at me. I remembered April 17th. I was 17. I'd gotten in a fight with my stepdad and stormed out. Wandered for hours. I sat at a bus stop, alone, feeling invisible. But I wasn't. He had been there. Watching. Loving from a distance. There was a final mark on the map. A cabin, deep in the woods, hours from here. Marked in bold. End. I packed the map. The letters. A thermos of coffee. And I rode. The sun rose behind me. Pines gave way to oaks. Asphalt to dirt. By afternoon, I found the cabin. It was smaller than I expected. Built by hand, or maybe passed down. The windows were shuttered. A woodpile leaned like a broken spine against the side. Inside clean. Simple. Lived in. A cot. A fire stove. A photograph tacked to the wall of a boy standing in a stream. Me. There was no power. No sound but the wind. And on the table, waiting. A tape recorder. Labeled in black ink. For him. I stared at it for a long time. Then I pressed play. The tape crackled. Then his voice filled the room. Hey. If you're hearing this, it means I didn't get to say everything. Or maybe I said too much in silence. Either way, you deserve to know. I leaned forward. The sound was warm, hissy. A whisper folded in static. I don't know where to begin. So I'll start with the truth. I never meant to disappear. I meant to fix myself before I could ruin you. That was the lie I told myself. That walking away was noble. That you'd be better off not knowing a man half-formed. He coughed. A breath drawn slow. I watched your whole life happen. I saw you fall off your bike the first time. I watched you scrape your knee and get up like it didn't hurt. God, you were brave. Always braver than me. The wind rattled outside. The recorder kept spinning. I wanted to say something so many times. But every time I got close, I thought, what if I ruin it? So I left breadcrumbs. A red coat. A marble I found at the park where you lost yours. A letter every year. A stranger's shadow. He paused. The silence stretched. I was there the night of the crash. Not by accident. I was following you. Not out of fear. Out of instinct. Something told me to stay close. I closed my eyes. I saw the headlights before you did. I saw the guardrail and knew it wouldn't hold. I didn't think. I just ran. I pulled you out. Your blood on my hands. It broke something open in me. Another pause. I wanted to stay. To wait by your bed. To finally speak. But I couldn't. Not like that. Not with guilt sitting in my chair. My hands were fists. He'd been there. All along. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't even expect you to remember me kindly. But I hope you believe I tried. Maybe not well. But I tried. A crack in his voice now. If I could go back, I wouldn't walk away that day at the hospital. I wouldn't miss the birthdays. I wouldn't let fear write your story. The tape words slower. One more thing. A breath. A lifetime folded into it. You are my son. Always were. And I am your father. Not just by blood, but by the ache that never left. I love you. I never stopped. Silence. Then the tape ended. I sat there with the machine in my lap, my chest shaking with a grief that didn't know where to go. Not new. Not sudden. Just finally heard. I rewound the tape. Pressed play again. And let it be the beginning of something I could finally carry. The next morning I stayed. I chopped wood. Not because I needed to. There was enough stacked to last a week. But because I needed to do something with my hands. I needed to move. To feel the crack of the axe, the weight of something splitting open and giving way. The forest around the cabin was still, heavy with the kind of silence that isn't empty, it's full. Full of things unspoken. Of footsteps that once passed through and echoes that refused to leave. I found myself talking out loud. Not to anyone. Just into the trees. Why didn't you stay? No answer. Just the wind. Just the crack of bark and the soft thud of a log hitting dirt. Then I remembered the shoebox in the closet. I hadn't opened it yet. I don't know why. Inside, Polaroids. Dozens. Most of me. Some of him. But never together. I sat on the floor with them spread around me. A timeline made of ghosts. Me with a birthday cake, 5 candles, eyes wide. Me playing baseball, swinging late. Me in the red coat. Then him. Older in each frame. Never smiling. Just watching. And finally, one photo that stopped my breath. Me. 17. Sitting at a bus stop, headphones in, chin tucked. And in the far corner of the frame, just barely there, his reflection in the glass. I dropped it. Because it was real. It wasn't just letters and memory. He'd been there. He'd always been there. I gathered the photos. Placed them in a neat pile beside the tape recorder. Then I took the last log to the fire. Lit it. Watched the flames curl around the bark. And I whispered into the heat. You were right. I am your son. The words felt strange. Heavy. Right. The night came quietly. Stars above the cabin blinked through the trees like someone trying to send a message. I slept on the cot. Blanket pulled to my chin. And for the first time in what felt like my entire life, I dreamed of him. Not leaving. But staying. I left the cabin at sunrise. The bike coughed to life, tired but willing. The road back to Echo Springs was half paved, the other half swallowed by roots and old leaves. It didn't feel like a return, it felt like retracing. Like taking the same steps, but this time seeing the footprints. I wasn't the same man who arrived here a week ago. I had a father now. Not just in blood, but in memory. In letters. In firewood and photographs and tape. At the edge of town, I stopped at the diner. The same rusted sign. The same single waitress. She looked up as I walked in and blinked like she almost remembered me. Coffee? I nodded. She poured. Said nothing. But as I reached for the mug, she placed something next to it. A folded piece of paper. I found this last week, she said. Thought maybe it was yours. It wasn't. But I recognized the handwriting. My father's. It read, if he ever comes through here, give him this. Inside, a single sentence. Don't forget the boat. The boat. I ran out without paying. The marina was 10 minutes down the road. I hadn't been since I was a kid, fishing with my uncle. Slip 37. I don't know why I knew. But I did. The boat was there. Covered. Old. But not forgotten. A note was pinned inside the cabin. She still floats. Just needed you to see it. There was no key. Just the truth. Just the ghost of a man who had built something in silence. I sat in the boat until dark. Let the water rock me. Watched the sky go red. And I thought, maybe love isn't about being present all the time. Maybe it's about what we leave behind. Proof. A trail. A boat that floats. For when we're ready to sail. The next morning, I went to the crossroads just outside Echo Springs. It wasn't marked on any map. Just a dirt split in the trees. North to the highway. South to the old quarry. East to nowhere. West back into town. I stood at the center. Turned slowly in each direction. Because this wasn't just a place. It was a choice. And I wasn't sure which version of myself I wanted to carry forward. I spent the day visiting the places he wrote about. Every note on the map, every circled name. The bench where I'd kissed a girl under fireworks. The diner where I spilled milk and cried over pancakes. The bookstore I used to loiter in, never buying, just reading the back covers. In every place, I asked the same question. Had he been here too? And in every place, the answer felt like yes. In a stack of used books at the shop, I found one tucked between two dictionaries. Spine cracked. A bookmark wedged halfway through. The bookmark was a photograph. Him. On the porch of the cabin. Holding something in his hands. It was the blue marble. I checked the inside cover. His name was scribbled there, DJS. I bought the book. Didn't care what it cost. I went to the local records office. Asked about property deeds. About family names. I wanted to know how long the Strattons had lived here. The clerk handed me a file. Turns out, the land the cabin sat on wasn't originally his. It was mine. Deeded over quietly. 10 years ago. Signed, Robert Stratton. He'd been giving me something all along. Even before I was ready to take it. That night, I drove out to the edge of the quarry. Parked the bike. Let the engine click itself quiet. There was a stone bench facing the drop. He'd carved something into it, barely legible. Where we break, we begin. I sat there for hours. Just breathing. Just being. And I understood something I hadn't before. He didn't come back to be seen. He came back to be near. Not to fix. But to witness. And maybe that was the braver thing. Not changing the past. Just refusing to abandon the present. I stood again at the crossroads the next morning. I had everything now. The letters. The photos. The deed. The tape. And I had a choice. Stay. Or leave. Become a son again. Or finally become a man. I looked west. Back to town. Then east. Into the unknown. I reached into my jacket. Pulled out the marble. Held it to the light. It shimmered. Storm caught in glass. And I whispered, "Okay. Let's go." Then I turned east. And walked into the trees. I didn't go east to run. I went east to return, differently. 3 towns over, I stopped at a payphone. The kind you don't think exist anymore, crusted with stickers and spiderwebs. I didn't need to use it. I just wanted to touch something old that still stood. Because I was learning that not everything has to disappear to matter. I moved slow. Not just across distance, but through time. Through every version of myself that had led me here. I stayed in places that smelled like pine. I spoke to strangers who didn't ask my name. I walked riverbanks with no map. Sometimes I took the marble from my pocket and held it up to the sky. It always caught the light. Like it remembered how to shine. Eventually I came back. Not to Echo Springs. To my mother's house. She opened the door and looked at me like I was both a memory and a question. "I thought you were gone," she said. "I was," I replied. We didn't hug. Not right away. We just stood in the silence that follows storms. Then she stepped aside, and I entered a place I hadn't called home in years. Over tea I told her. Not everything. Just enough. That he had died. That he had saved me. That I found letters. A cabin. A voice. I watched her eyes shimmer, not with grief, but with the weight of something long buried being unearthed gently. She didn't cry. She just said, "He always had the wrong words. But I think he wanted to be better." I nodded. Because that was enough. I moved back to the cabin in spring. Cut the grass. Hung new curtains. Left one wall of the study completely bare, save for a photo, him and me, a blend of decades stitched together in edits. I started writing. Letters. Not to him. To myself. To the boy who waited by the phone. To the man who found a stranger on the side of the road and learned what grace felt like. One day, I rode the motorcycle to the far edge of the ridge. There, I planted a tree. Nothing symbolic. Just a tree. Because roots matter. Even the invisible ones. Sometimes, the wind carries his voice. Not as words. Just as a feeling. A weight lifted. A presence staying longer than it should. And sometimes, I leave the door open at night, just in case. Not because I expect him. But because I want him to know, I made it. I teach now. Woodwork. Not because I'm great at it, but because my hands remember the rhythm. And I like the sound of kids making something out of nothing. Sometimes I give them marbles. One by one. Blue. Cloudy. Like a piece of sky you can carry. I tell them, keep it close. Not because it's magic, but because it reminds you to look up. They don't understand it yet. But someday they might. The day I finished the last letter to myself, I took the tape recorder out onto the porch. Press play. Listen to my father's voice one more time. Not because I needed to hear it, but because I could finally listen without breaking. When the tape clicked off, I didn't rewind. I let it rest. And in the hush that followed, I said it back. I love you too. Not to a ghost. But to the man I now understood. To the man who stayed long enough to save me. To the man who became a father. Even if it took him a lifetime to arrive.